It looks like after many months of relative quiet, our Cardano blockchain is back under heavy load. While this time it might be for trivial speculative purposes, there are macro forces currently at play that may change all that. Ready? Let's go. Today, we are going to discuss the recent load on the Cardano blockchain, a new theory from Arthur Hayes on why crypto might be in a phenomenally good position right now, rumors about the SEC and Binance, and something going on in the ecosystem of Cardano's biggest competitor that feels a lot like straight up theft. If you could immediately tell that this is an actual historical photograph of Ada Lovelace back in the 1840s, getting a nice workout in after a busy day of inventing computer programming, or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. Take a look at this. The Cardano blockchain has not been under this kind of load for some time. At a certain point today, it looks like we reached 94% load on the blockchain. We haven't seen anything like this for a while because we haven't had any big events to bring out the degens. But the recent speculative craze on the Cardano blockchain and on a bunch of other blockchains in crypto has definitely brought out all the degens. While I think this is just, like I said, a speculative craze, there are some forces at play that might cause crypto activity, or maybe crypto activity is even the wrong phrase for it, but there are certain macro forces at play that may have a big impact on crypto soon if certain people's theories are correct. I'm going to show you exactly the theory I'm talking about in just 1 second, but first you need a little bit of context. This is a document available on the federalreserve.gov website. It's called Impact of Rising Rates on Certain Banks and Supervisory Approach Background Materials. This was published in April 2023, just last month. If you come down here to page 7, I believe it is. Yeah, page 7. No, is it 7? 6. Page 6. So sorry, page 6. There's some important context here. At third quarter end, 722 banks reported unrealized losses exceeding 50% of capital. So think about that. We've talked, recently and before that, a couple of weeks ago, we've talked quite a bit about these unrealized losses that the banks, a lot of regional banks, seem to be suffering. And here we get a number on that. At third quarter end, so think about that. We're not saying end of Q4, we're saying end of Q3. End of Q3, 722 banks reported unrealized losses exceeding an amount equal to half of their capital. This is a huge number of banks. People on Twitter today saw this and were reporting this number as 22. And they were quickly corrected by people who actually read the report. It's 722 banks. That is a large number of banks reporting unrealized losses that are huge, exceeding half of all their capital. I know what you're thinking. Hey, bro, how does this apply to crypto? I didn't sign up for the banking rumor rundown. I signed up for the Cardano rumor rundown. Not to worry, Arthur Hayes is going to tell you exactly how this might very strongly impact crypto, and by extension, we can say Cardano. So this is an article called The Denominator. I strongly suggest you read this article. You may want to read his previous article called Kaiseki. I think it was called Kaiseki. I don't speak Japanese, so I'm sure I'm butchering that word and probably even misremembering or missing syllables, but something like that. We talked about it on the channel, but you should read that article before this one if you want to understand everything, or just watch the video I made on that previous article and watch this video. This is definitely another one of those articles where Arthur Hayes is going to find a very entertaining way to explain some pretty technical information. And this time he does it by telling you about the problems you encounter when you are in the nightclub buying bottle service and there are girls around, and at the end of the night, you don't want to be the only one paying the bill. You want to make sure that bill is divided up correctly among all the responsible parties. I think anybody who's ever been in a nightclub and paid a bill can appreciate what he's saying here. But let's get to the important part down here, where he's going to relate this not wanting to be the bag holder thing to what's happening in US banking. And this is important for crypto. So if we come all the way down here to the bottom, there is a section called the denominator. So here he's going to explain to you. Uh, you'll remember from his previous article, the non too big to fail banks, they all have this problem with unrealized losses because the Fed has been hiking rates and they all bought these treasury securities at lower rates. So they're underwater on all these treasury securities because rates have gone up and they bought those when rates were much lower. So they have these unrealized losses on all those treasury securities. Simultaneously, also because rates are going up, money market funds are much more attractive to depositors than bank savings accounts. He describes it as the difference between getting, 0.5% in as a bank depositor and 5% in interest as in a money market fund. And obviously, nobody wants to get 0.5% when they can get 5%. So he's saying deposits are going to flee the banks. And as deposits flee, the bank must sell loans for much less than face value and realize a loss. He's saying, as a reminder, the reason why these loans must be backstopped is because deposits fled. So deposits leave the bank, then the bank must sell loans for less than face value and take a loss. This is obviously the scenario he's saying will lead to the bankruptcy of this huge number of non too big to fail banks, 100% by his estimation, unless one of two things happens. Number one, the Fed could cut rates. If they cut rates, then the banks can raise their deposit rates to be competitive with the money market funds, and then deposits will quit fleeing the banks. So the Fed could raise rates. The second option would be that the Treasury Department expands the bank term funding program. You'll remember that previously it was sort of just for mortgage-backed securities and Treasury securities. They could expand it to include any loan on a US bank's balance sheet. That would be another way to solve the problem. But you notice option number one, that's just a loosening of financial conditions, which in Arthur Hayes' estimation would cause risk assets like Bitcoin, gold, stocks, real estate, etc., to all pump because this is a decline in the price of money. The price of money goes down, and he's saying assets like crypto are going to pump. In number two, you've got an actual increase in the supply of money. This BATFP program, like we talked about in the previous video, that's an expansion in the supply of money. That's brand new money being pumped into the system. And of course, if you have an increase in the supply of money and the amount of good cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Cardano, if the supply of those cryptocurrencies remains the same, then he's saying gold and Bitcoin are going to go up. He says they're going to go up because either the supply of money increases or the price of money decreases. He says the only way the money printer doesn't go burr is if the US government decides it will let the banking system actually fail, but he has full confidence that the US political elite would rather print money than right-size the banking system. He concludes by saying, you just can't lose owning gold and Bitcoin. You know me, whenever I see a Bitcoin maximalist say Bitcoin, I just sort of substitute the word Cardano in there. But again, this is the analysis of Arthur Hayes. I'm not presenting any of this as fact or making any predictions here myself or saying that this is what the future is going to look like. But Arthur Hayes in these articles, he is pretty persuasive. He may turn out to be right or wrong, but it's a really interesting analysis to consider at this point in time. We've got some more regulatory enforcement action rumors. This account says, update, two sources have made it clear that the SEC is very close to moving on actions against Binance, Binance US, as well as CZ personally. This account source says he has to hope that it is just the SEC and not the DOJ as well, unregistered securities versus money laundering. So we've heard rumblings about Binance for quite a while. Obviously, the regulators seem to be very interested in Binance. So it would be interesting to see if we finally get a conclusion to that, if the SEC finally does make a move against Binance. It would be even wilder if the DOJ kind of jumped into the fray. Those would have to be money laundering charges, sanctions violations, those kinds of things. And it is kind of hard to imagine that, parties who the DOJ would be interested in, like, wouldn't have used Binance at this point. Finally, here's something going on in the ecosystem of Cardano's biggest competitor that's almost going to seem unbelievable. In the past, you've heard me say on this channel that I think miner extractable value is deeply unethical, deeply wrong. It's very hard for me to not use words like theft and fraud when thinking about miner extractable value and the sandwiching of transactions. I think there are a lot of people trying to use a blockchain like Ethereum who have no idea what MEV is or how it works. And they're the victims of these MEV extractors without even knowing that MEV exists. And certainly when they sort of like, sign up for, doing an Ethereum transaction, they're not imagining that somebody's going to do that to them. Some people do understand MEV, but there are probably a lot of people using the Ethereum blockchain who have no idea it's going on or even what it is. And here we see that the tune to which this is happening is incredible. So this post says, Jared from Subway.eth, a MEV extractor, is currently earning $2.6 million on average every day. So there's been quite a bit of tweeting about this particular account, Jared from Subway.eth, about the crazy amount of MEV that account's doing every day. This post, 2.6 million per day. This is a single MEV extractor. Apparently a single party is pulling 2.6 million out of the transactions of, probably a lot of regular people trying to use the Ethereum network. I think this is a deeply flawed architecture. If it leads to this end result, this is the wrong architecture. Luckily, I think in Cardano, we can talk all day about the extent to which, sort of like via a validator, extractable, not even validator, but we'll say off-chain batcher extractable value, the extent to which that happens in Cardano, but it's definitely not to this extent. Any extraction of value being done by off-chain batchers for, DEXs or other platforms, it's not anything like this. I don't think anybody in Cardano is pulling out 2.6 million per day. I think it's hard to make a case at this point that Ethereum is the right architecture if it leads to a result like this, and there's apparently no way to fix it. I think in Cardano, we've probably already found a better way, and it's only a matter of time before the rest of the world figures that out. I hope you're having a great week, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.